All right, this is lesson 2 of our 10-week study on going up. And we are getting started by reviewing what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about, because we started with the verse in Psalms about why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you disquieted within me, and what those words mean. And basically the overarching definition is overwhelmed. When we're overwhelmed with the anxiety, the depression, the stress, the hopelessness, the guilt, the loneliness, the everything that can drag us down. And so whenever we hear the and we talked about whenever we hear the phrase, why are you cast down, if we translate it, we hear it in our mind saying, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And so for sake of our study, we're kind of labeling it as, what is your down? What is your cast down thing? We talked about the difference between the heart and the brain and the spirit, because your heart, lets your physical body function, your brain organizes all those functions, and then your spirit is that part of you that makes you self-aware. And it, in the original language, it means breath or wind. And then I gave a disclaimer that says, I am not a psychiatrist, I am not a psychologist, I have never played a doctor on TV. I cannot I am not qualified to diagnose any ailments that you might have. And there are some ailments that are because of our bodies, because of our physical bodies. There are some of the maladies that are because of the way our brains work, the way the synapses connect. And if you need medication for your body, if you need medication for your brain, then by all means, you need to be taking those medications. You need to be under a doctor's care. What we're talking about specifically is about the spirit and about the things that overwhelm us, that overwhelm our spirit. And physical and mental things that we come into contact with can affect your spirit, because our enemy, Satan, will use all those things against us. And Satan is a student of human nature. He knows how people react to different things, and sometimes he will, push those things on us so that we'll fall down. Let me think. I'm trying to go through this quickly. Satan knows how to bait us. And then our homework was to put a label on it. Why are you cast down? Why are you disquieted? What label does your cast down wear? And then once you make your list of whatever's you're cast down, you're supposed to come up with the opposite word and write it down. So, LaDonna, did you do any of your homework?
So, I had a problem with this because, I got a lot of problems, and a lot of stuff going on in all three of those areas, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, but I don't feel cast down.
Yes.
I really don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
That's okay. That's okay. And all the better if that pit or that hole hasn't drug you down. Then all the better for you. Nana, did you think of anything? Do y'all hear that? Nana says she's anxious, worried, depressed, and feels guilty a lot of the times. Those are all things that Satan can use to drag us down. He knows the things that get us best. Y'all don't know Nana. You may not have met Nana, but she's my mother-in-law. And She doesn't really have any reason to be depressed because she lives with me. Um, somebody's phone. Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. So, but Satan knows the things that will grab you and will drag you down. And so those are the things that Nana feels like has the reason she's cast down. Did you write down the opposite word, Nana? Relaxed. Okay. What would be the opposite of worry? Happy?
No, put me on that.
You what?
Mine was all that she mentioned.
Hers is
I said all of the above that you mentioned.
that you mentioned, and one of them was anxiety to relaxation.
Oh, the opposite
Anxiety.
of anxiety would be relaxed or relaxation. Okay.
Depression,
Depression, happiness,
Depression,
stress.
stress.
stress. Which
What's the
probably
opposite of
be,
stress?
Joy.
Joy? How about carefree?
Austin's coming up that I didn't have a word.
Carefree.
Yeah.
I'm helping her come up with these words. in
What
my
would
head
be
right
what would, here, Nana's got a good one. What would be the opposite of guilty?
now.
Forgiven.
Forgiven. I love it.
Forgiven is the opposite of guilty. Yes. And one of the things I did was I read a story. Do y'all remember the story about the that I read that was from the Portia Nelson poem
Yes.
about walking down the street?
Yeah.
I know I did not come up with that. That was something I've read somewhere and I just can't find it. So I just, but it comes from this poem. And so we're going to review that a little bit
Yeah,
today.
it's a good book.
So this is what we need to do. Before we can plot our step up, because that's our study going up. We have to know where we are. So that was part of your homework, was figure out where you are. Miss Pat, do you know where you are? Okay. Yeah, tell me where you're at. Okay.
I could name my cast down Patsy because it's of the choices that I made.
Mhm.
And I have to learn how to make choices that make me happy,
Mhm.
because when I'm happy, then I don't have the rest of the problems.
Mhm.
So
So
when
you
you talk about midway to there, and my up is Jesus. And I keep telling him he ain't doing such a good job today because we're still down. But we're trying. Because
Stem from you. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is, how did I get here? How did I get here? Okay, part of that poem was, I'm walking down the street and there's a hole in the street and I fall in. And I don't know how I got here. I'm dazed and confused. I stay here for a while until somebody comes and picks me up and helps me up. Yes, I can't hear you, Austin. You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, can you send that poem to me because I missed it?
Yes, I will. I'll send it to you. I've got it written down. I actually have it on one of my PowerPoint slides today. The actual poem by Portia Nelson, not the one that I rewrote for myself. But I can tell you that, I walk down the street, I fall in, I'm confused. Eventually somebody helps me out. The next day I walk down the same street, and I know the hole's there and I fall in, and then I yell until someone comes to help me out. And the next day I walk down the same street, I tried to go around it, I fall in anyway. Now I'm mad and I sit here for a while because, it's my own dumb fault that I fell in this hole. And finally somebody comes and gets me out. And the next day I walk down the same street, I fall in, but I'm determined to get myself out of this hole. And I spend way too much time trying to get myself out until I realize that I just can't. And then I let somebody help me out of the hole. The next day I walk down the street, I fall in the same hole. I know how I got there. I realize I can't get out myself and I call for help right away. The next day, I take a different street. So, and that's sometimes we take the same street over and over and over again, and then we wonder why we're still here. Why am I in this hole? Because I keep taking the same street. So one of the things that we want to do in this Bible study is figure out what the hole is and figure out how I got here. And then we can work our way out of the hole. So I have 3 things that we talked about last time, and that's what we're going to start with today, is the 3 things of how did I get here? And the first one was, I guess I need to share my screen, don't I? I'm going and not even sharing my screen. There we go. Well, I have all this written down in a slideshow that we're going to start from the beginning. Okay, there we go. Can y'all see? Okay, so week 2, how did I get here? So we need to know where we are. We already talked about that. If you gave your cast down a label, then you need to know what's the opposite of that label so that we know, what we're going to shoot for. So how did you get here? There's 3 things that we talked about last time. The first one was that God purposed it for you. The other one is the result of choices that you have made. And the number 3 is that the earth is corrupted by sin. Tainted, corrupted completely by sin. Those are the 3 basic, everything falls under those umbrella. Now, there are lots of different places you can look at specifics, but those are the 3 major ones. And so we're going to start with the last one. The earth is corrupted by sin because sin is like a cancer. And sin, the existence of, when your body has, they say that all bodies have some kind of cancer cells in them, and that sometimes there's they don't know why for sure, that they start to grow and they start to multiply and they attack in a certain place. And then it'll just grow and grow and grow until it destroys. And sin is like that. It's like this starts as something small, but sin exists in the world and the whole earth is tainted by it. Famine, pestilence, illness, disease, all of those things exist because sin exists. All of those things that, global warming exists because sin exists. Erosion and, because you plant a garden, weeds and bugs in a garden that you have to root out. They're all there because sin exists. Not because of a specific sin you created, but because sin exists, they're there. And our natural reaction, I put the question in here, is what of your maladies or your cast downs exists because of the presence of sin? If you think about, there are things that you don't have control over at all. The fact that our bodies age and the pains that we get in our body, those exist because sin exists. No, sickness exists because of sin. If sin did not exist in the world, there would be no sickness. Our bodies would not decay. We would not get wrinkles. Things would not wrinkle and sag. Because those are the things that exist. So part of your depression, Nana, is not being able to get around and do the things that you want to do. Some of that is the result of the fact that sin exists, and as we age, our bodies age. It's not anything that you can change because we're all going to get older, and the aches and pains of aging is the result of the fact that sin exists in the world. Does that make sense? And Satan, our enemy, because our enemy knows the natural reaction of humans, he will get you, he will attack you by reminding you of all the things you can't do anymore because you've gotten old. And all of those things, the way the how did I get here? Some of that is because sin exists. And if we all live long enough, eventually our bodies will wear out and die because sin exists. Because we live in a earth that is corrupted by sin. Make sense? Okay. Possibly because of the way your body, when you broke your wrist and the way it healed, some of that is because of the earth is tainted by sin. Now, the natural reaction to the presence of sin is to want to place blame. So that's where we're going to look at Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Romans, y'all, is a really great book, but I just have to tell you, Paul is hard to read sometimes because he doesn't write simple. It's a little, you gotta, I have to read it 2 or 3 times before I can, oh, gotcha. So Romans chapter 5, we're gonna read verse 12 through 21. So, LaDonna, do you want to read?
Okay.
You want to read, I don't know.
12 through 21, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men because all sinned. For under the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who had not sinned, according to the likeness of the transgression of Adam, who is a type of him who was to come. But the free gift.
Hang on just a second. I want to read, in mine it says, even those who had not sinned as Adam did. Adam is a type of him, a type of Christ who was to come, but in reverse. Adam brought destruction, Christ brought salvation. Okay, go ahead.
But the free gift is not like the offense. For if by the one man's offense many died, much more the grace of God and the gift by the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abounded to many. And the gift is not like that which came through the one who sinned, for the judgment which came from one offense resulted in condemnation. But the free gift which came from many offenses resulted in justification. For if by the one man's offense death reigned through the one, much more those who receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness will reign in life through the one, Jesus Christ. Therefore, as through one man's offense judgment came to all men, resulting in condemnation, even so through one man's righteous act, the free gift came to all men, resulting in justification of life. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so also by one man's obedience many will be made righteous. Moreover, the law entered that the offense might abound. But where sin abounded, grace abounded much more, so that as sin reigned in death, even so grace might reign through righteousness to life to eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord.
If you need to read that over and over again, it's just an amazing passage, and it's just basically saying, because of Adam's sin, all these things, judgment, condemnation, death, justification by one man, all of those things were covered. Everything was made righteous by one man, which is Jesus Christ. But here's what happens. Satan wants, because he's our opponent, He wants us to blame someone for the fact that sin exists in the world. He wants us to blame ourselves, or he wants us to blame God. You see, if he can get us focused on blaming ourselves or blaming God, then he keeps the spotlight off of him and off of the fact that sin exists in the world. Sin exists in the world, and Satan is the master manipulator. And so here's what happens. If you have shame or guilt or unworthiness or self-loathing anywhere in your life, anywhere, any of your cast downs, that's direct evidence of the presence that Satan has been there. That's evidence that Satan has shown up. If you have anger or resentment or rebelliousness or pride or doubt or cynicism, any of that stuff is evidence that Satan has successfully shifted the blame off of himself and onto God. Why are there famines and disasters in the world? Because of sin, because sin exists. And yet, how often do you hear someone say, whenever children are dying, in somewhere dying of hunger, they'll say, they'll say, how could God let that happen? When the real blame is, it happens because sin exists. Dale came and got my keys. So those things happen because sin exists. All right, we're going to go to the next one, which is the result of our own choices. Every day we make choices. Some of them are unconscious choices. Some of them are deliberate. Every choice affects the next set of choices, right? So we make a choice today. We make a choice first thing in the morning to wake up to your alarm clock or to sleep in a little bit longer. That choice now makes us either we're running late for our day or we are just late for work. We're in a hurry and blah, 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 or we're late. And then if you're blah, 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 then that affects whether you remember to grab your lunch before you walk out the door or not. You see what I'm saying? Every choice leads to a different choice. And some choices are bigger than others. So someone who, let's say, you make a choice in high school not to study, which causes you to have bad grades. Well, now you have bad grades and your options are more limited. So without the good grades, you may not be able to get into college or to any kind of higher education. And your choice then is to take a job that you have the skill set for. Without the education, you don't have the skill set for a job that would pay more money. Now you're stuck in a low paying job. You're stuck in a hole. Because of choices that you made. Now, you can't change choices you made in the past. Whatever choices you made yesterday, you can't change that. Whatever choices you made last year, you can't change that. Whatever choices you made 10 years ago, you can't change that. What can you do? You can figure out,
Move forward.
how do I take the choices that I've made, the hole that I'm in, and move forward from here. And sometimes that is more difficult than it'd be easier to say, oh, this is because of there's sin in the world, that's why I'm in this hole. But sometimes I'm in this hole because of my choices, because of the choices that I made. So we have to figure out, what choices do I have now that will affect from this point forward? And we're going to talk about this more in the next lesson. Now, I have this this poem from Portia Nelson. This is the original poem from Portia Nelson, and I put it in the PowerPoint, but you don't have it written on your sheet.
I just got
And
portion.
it's called Autobiography in 5 Chapters is the name of the poem. And chapter 1 is I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. Oh, hang on. I can't see the screen. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. So that's the poem from Portia Nelson. Well, mine's not a poem, mine's a story, but anyway. So another thing that is, we've got because the world is tainted by sin and because of the choices that we make. But there is a possibility that it could be a combination of the two. Our response to the choices of others. Because sometimes there are things, sometimes our down is because of sinful choices others made in our lives. Circumstances that are beyond our control. If you've ever said, it's not fair, it's just not fair. That's right. It's just not fair. Or here's one, God could have kept this from happening. God could have kept this from happening. So the combination of the two, because the world is tainted by sin and because of choices that you've made, our response to these is our choice. See, there are horrible things that are done to people. People commit horrible things to other people, against people all the time. Because this world is tainted by sin, there are people who make choices to hurt other people. Your cast down could be because of choices that someone else made against you. It was not your fault. It was beyond your control. It's not fair. And God could have kept it from happening. I worked in at the children's home for so many years, and I can't tell you how many kids that I had that came into my life that had been hurt and damaged because of things that other people had done to them. And there was absolutely nothing I could do. There was nothing they could do. It had been done. And I argued with God for a long time because God saw it happening and he could have stopped it. God knew it was happening. He could have kept it from happening, but he didn't. And that puts us in a whole different hole, a whole different pit. Because what can Satan do with that way of thinking? The blame game, you end up blaming God. When whose fault is it?
Yeah.
It's because sin exists in the world. The person who molested the child that I was taking care of and caused them, did such horrible things to that child, that was not because God did that. It was because Satan did that, because sin exists in the world. And you have to take that anger and put it where it belongs. Because horrible things happen to people because sin exists in the world. It's not fair. God could have kept it from happening, but he didn't. And I don't understand it. See, and I guess it's a really good thing that I'm not God, because if I were God, any person that that molested a child would automatically get zapped with lightning at that moment. I mean, if I were God, I can think of all kinds of horrible things that I would do to them, and what kind of body parts I would rot and let fall off. Because, but
I'm frozen, y'all.
I'm not God. We can hear you. I'm not God. And God has to be a God of justice and a God of mercy at the same time. I can't do that. And Satan will use that human nature in us to keep
I
us,
think it's coming back.
put us in a hole. We can hear you. We think you're coming back too. It says you're muted, but I just heard you say we're coming back. If you missed part of it, you can catch it on the replay. So that takes us to the third reason. The first reason, we're going backwards, is that God purposed it for you. This one is probably the hardest one to embrace. Mostly because nobody wants to volunteer to be Job. Right?
Of what you made yourself and what God lets you become. I think I've got it right.
Yeah.
And you made the choices, but God is still with you. I mean, look what he did with his son. He was human. That took me a long time to understand that why, if he could do all these things for me, why didn't he do it for his baby? Why did he do it for Jesus?
Because the payment for sin had to be made. Nobody else could make it. So obviously God knows everything that's going to happen because he is all knowing. And he knows what each and every one of us have been through. And he knows what's still coming. So it's hard for us to see when we're in the middle of the down. Okay, Austin, start coming back. When we're in the middle of the down, it's really, really hard to see that God wants to take every trial, every bad thing every bad thing that is because of the world is tainted by sin, every bad thing that is because of our own choices, every bad thing that is because of the choices others have made against us. God can take all of those things and he can use it for his good. Now, that doesn't make the thing we went through good. It makes the result something that he can turn into good. And I want to say this, if I can move the screen again. You've heard the phrase, God will never give you more than you can handle. That is flawed. That is not true. It is not true. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Let's read it ourselves. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. That's the phrase that says God will never give you more than you can handle. That's what everybody tells you. God will never give you more than you can handle. Satan. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 12 through 14. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Do you want to read that for us? Okay, Miss Pat wants to read it.
So I know why I was wrong. Right. 12 through 14. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. It was, it says 10, 12 through 14.
Yep. So God will never give you more than you can handle. God will never give you more than than you can handle. Why is that flawed? Because there is sin. Because we have choices. Because some of the holes that we fall into are not something that God gave you, but they are the things that drag us down. God's not going to, what it says is, he will not allow you to be tempted more than you are able, because with that temptation, he will always give you a way of escape. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability to resist. Which means we're going to go, some of the things that we go through could be more than, this is more than I can handle. It's hard. Miss Pat had a brother that committed suicide. Satan wouldn't let him out to get out on the other side, because at every moment, God gave him a choice. It's like God was there with the ladder. This God will never give you more than you can handle. It's whenever you tell somebody that God's not going to give you more than you can handle, then in the back of your mind, Satan can use that to say, why is God letting this happen to you? Again, taking the blame, putting it on God. Point the finger at God. Because those things that we go through, it says that God will give us a way to be able to endure it. Sometimes it's more than we can handle. When my son died, I could not. That was more than I could bear. That was more than I could bear. But I had a choice at that moment. Do I take the human nature in me and let it pull me down and keep pulling me down? I describe it sometimes like being dropped in the water, and you're dropped in the middle of the ocean, and you have a choice to make. You can either tread water or you can sink. There were times when I didn't want to tread water. Sometimes we get in this hole. We don't want to tread. We don't want to try. It's too hard. But there is always God with the ladder. God is always there with the ladder. That's what 1 Corinthians says. 1 Corinthians 10 says. It doesn't say you're never going to fall into a hole too deep for you to get out of. It says you're going to fall in a hole. but God is always gonna be there with the ladder. Sometimes we choose not to yell for help. We try and claw our way out of that hole by ourselves. And it hurts. It hurts hard. And sometimes we make that choice. We figure out how we got there. We're just gonna stay. I put this slide in there. I don't think I put it in your notes here, but the how did I get here is the first step. And so I put my verses that fit me on the slide here, because for me, in my hole, in my place where I am, these verses in Psalms is my story. So Psalm 119:67 says, before I was afflicted, I went astray. Before Joshua died, I was just rolling along, content with my my going through the motions, checking the boxes, doing all the thing, go to church, reading the Bible on my to-do list, going through doing all the stuff I was supposed to do. I was active in church. I, sang in the choir and led the youth group and chaperoned every trip and, carried a casserole to every potluck and, everything. And I could get pins for perfect attendance, but there was something that was missing. I was in a hole. I didn't even know I was there. Before I was afflicted, I went astray. Psalm 119:92 says, if your law had not been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. And that's my story. If I had not found that ladder in the word, if I had not found a way out, I would have perished in my affliction. So that verse 71 says, it is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. Does that mean that it was good that my son died? No. And my son died because sin exists in the world. God can take the worst thing and use it for good. If when your brother killed himself, that was a horrible thing. And his choices, you don't have to answer for his choices, but Satan gets to use your choices of how you deal with that hole to place blame, to bring some of those cast down things. Guilt. Why didn't I see it? Why couldn't I have helped him? What could I have done different? All those questions, Satan can use those in our human nature, because it's in our human nature. But your brother committed suicide because sin exists in the world, and because he couldn't find the ladder. And that was his choice that you can't change, and you can't blame yourself, and you can't blame anyone else but sin that exists in the world. So the next question, then this is what we're going to talk about next time. So I want you to, because we don't have enough time to get into it, but this is part of, I guess this would be part of your homework. You need to ask the question, how bad do I want to get out? I know I'm in this hole. I know what the hole is. I know what the cast down is. I know how I got here. But how bad do I want to get out? And so you need to ask yourself, is it a matter of life or death? If I stay in this hole, am I going to die here? Is it a matter of life or death? Here's the other question you need to ask. how can I be effective to the kingdom from my position of cast down? Whatever this is that has cast me down, can I be effective to the kingdom from this position of cast down? You know why Satan likes to keep all of us depressed and anxious and worried and feeling guilty? Because we're no good to the kingdom when we're like that. We're no good to the kingdom whenever we let worry and anxiety and fear overcome us. And Satan says, oh, it's okay. You have every reason to be depressed. You poor thing. Just stay here. Just stay here and make yourself comfortable. I said something about last time about, let's just decorate the pit, put up curtains, light some potpourri, whatever, and stay here. The other question you need to ask is, will I be bringing anyone down with me? Will I be bringing anyone down with me? This is the question you need to ask. How bad do I want to get out? If I'm in this hole, even if it's not going to kill me, so it's not life or death. If I'm not effective in the kingdom because of my position, am I dragging anybody else down with me?
Well,
Because the First Corinthians says there is no temptation that too great that God cannot. Now, if you're cast, well, you got to define your cast down. If your cast down is because of the result, because the earth is tainted by sin, yes, we're going to work on that. Yes, that's going to be part of we're going to come up with specific actionable steps to help us out of our cast down, out of the hole. But you have to know what the hole is, and you have to know how you got there, and you have to know how bad do I want to get out. And will I be bringing anyone down with me? But everybody's not going to come join you in your hole and have a party. You got to climb out of the hole, because eventually, to be effective for the kingdom, we not only have to get out of the hole, but we have to figure out how to help somebody else get out of the hole. We got to be ready to stand around with our ladders, ready to help say, look, been in this same hole. There is a way out. Because that's where we need to be effective for the kingdom, is figure out how bad do I want to get out. Now, Miss Pat, I knew you were coming to this Bible study, so I have to show you my slide.
oh, well, yes, he's cute. He knows I like cute people. I like good.
That's okay. I'll show them to you later. But anyway, the how bad do I want to get out? So our homework. You got to take some time to reflect on your position, the thing that has you cast down. You need to identify how you got there. And then I want you to write down what you think. You can write it on your paper, or your journal, or whatever. What would it be like to be free of that malady, of whatever it is that has can you picture yourself, what yourself would be like if you were free of that? And I want you to, the question says, what can you see happening if you were free of your malady? If you were free of your cast down, what do you see happening? And then for homework, I want you to read Romans 8 every day this week. Well, read it once, read it all week long, whatever. Romans chapter 8. If you can read it every day, read it every day. It's only like 40 verses, but all right. I'm gonna stop sharing. There we go. Did anybody learn anything? I'm gonna stop the recording on this in just a minute, and then let me stop the recording. And then we can